Hello everybody. The final week overview just posted here. Final week, you're completing the final assignments and submit. Now the final assignment for everyone obviously is the argumentation final draft. So I'm going to touch base on this one more time real quick. Make sure you go through those overview videos if you need to. It needs to be a minimum of 5 full pages, at least 15 sources, all from the peer-reviewed, from the OCC databases, must be peer-reviewed sources. I need to make sure that everybody understands this. I can't give credit on those sources, and I can't give you a lot of credit on the paper. If you're going through Google searches, I still have 3 or 4 students per section of 1510 right now that it doesn't look like much of the sourcing is from those. I've tried to address those individually. Now on this, remember the intro must follow general to specific. That means if you start the intro paragraph talking about the topic you're writing about, if you're doing climate change and you start with your first line talking about it, you're already off, right? It should be a general category of something else, the category that fits into, another example of a crisis, and then the your topic section is where everything comes in for your topic. All body paragraphs for and against must begin with topic sentence claims in support of or against. Everything must be third-person objective in both argument and voice, no first or second person, and avoid biased subjective claims. I addressed this on many of those pre-writing and outlining documents, but on a couple of drafts still that came through, still had some bias, and there was some very subjective claims. Remember, it doesn't matter which side of an argument you're on, but if you start off by debasing the other side, you're automatically being subjective at the start of it. You have to prove your points. You can't just say things that, particularly think about the types of pathos appeals you're making over logos. Those are clear indicators that you're starting off a little bit, not to say that those don't matter, but when you start doing those things and then doing personal attacks on things, you're going ad hominem, some of those fallacies. Make sure you avoid those. All body paragraphs must include 1 to 2 quotes as minor supports. The bare minimum is 1. You must have everything really tight there. And then what I would say is this. On your against paragraphs, everybody try and shoot for 2 on those if you can. 1 for your support of your opposition, and then 1 for your concession or refutation, to use a quote to defend what you're going to say against them. For all quotes, follow that intro, give, explain, or defend quote format. I've marked that on a lot of the things already in there, in the basic formatting. You should be making a claim. The quote should be a support of the claim, and then you should explain and or defend that quote usage. Do not use quotes to make arguments. Use them to defend arguments. All against paragraph must include a concession or refutation. That means you're dealing with that opposition, right? All against paragraphs should focus on clear relevant points of opposition. We went through this before. Works cited should begin at the top of a new page in MLA format. Minimum 15 sources on this, and all drafts must meet all MLA requirements, including the works cited pages. Now, anything on this, now especially extending this to the last possible date that I can. Remember, I have to be able to get these things reviewed. In terms of some of these on here, now, most students are all up to date and are submitting this, the final draft of argumentation. If you didn't get something on feedback on one of the files, don't worry. I will take that into consideration when grading. I won't mark you down further on other drafts if you didn't have something posted for one of those. I do have a couple of files for students here and there to still be posted up and published. Some of those issues, most of those issues have to do with students handing things in at different times. You know, I think we've worked back and forth to try and I've tried to accommodate late things and in students with extenuating circumstances, this term, that are not typical of this type of a semester. But I have worked with several students. It's put me behind a little bit in different areas, but I think it's finally coming together at the end here. Just make sure you guys are doing your part and finally getting all these things in. A couple of you I had to make accommodations for on a couple of things being submitted at once due to some very serious circumstances that you dealt with this term. Now, if you are in a situation where it's the end of the semester and you just lost the whole term, remember, there's nothing really I can do about any of that. I addressed this, I think, the last 2 times. Consider withdrawal or contact, if you're going, contact registration or your advisor about what your options are. Most of that has to be a withdrawal or a failing grade. I really can't justify withdrawal, stopped attending, unless you did have enough work in to justify that. I had a couple of students ask me about those forms at the beginning of the term. For those of you who asked me about those, yes, I did still accept those and put those in there. Just remember that a problem for several students was that you had typed the name in on some of those, and originally I wasn't accepting that for either one. I was fine accepting it in terms of the FERPA, but the academic dishonesty one, that's one that I have a problem with there. But for individual circumstances where I've talked to students about these or had some kind of communication, we've in have an understanding where I got confirmation via email. We've made some contingencies there. Now, for other students, I have gone through and on your drop boxes, everything else with final submissions, memoir, rhetorical analysis, and argumentation components, I have left all those drop boxes accessible. So if you did get approval to hand in late work on those things, because you and I were in communication and we discussed those things, gave me documentation, or you and I have at length been discussing these things already, those drop boxes are accessible. That doesn't mean the due dates are changed. They're just accessible for you to put in a late assignment there. I will take those things into consideration over the next 3 days as I enter in final grades. Just remember, I am doing everything I can to give everybody reasonable credit for what they actually did. If you really didn't participate or do anything this term, you can't expect anything the final week, 8-9 days of the semester. Nothing that I can do about those. All right. So the final thing is argumentation final draft. I got about over 70% of the classes now of the just online 1510s. Your guys' class here, a little over 70% now have everything seemingly up to date. Just finalizing argumentation, and then I got some of you, as I said, handfuls here and there where you're catching up on some of those things because of the extenuating circumstances. I leave those drop boxes accessible. They will be accessible until this weekend. On I believe I left them accessible until the 30th. So the due date of this argumentation final draft, those other drop boxes, the final draft for memoir, the rhetorical analysis, and then all the argumentation components, those drop boxes are all accessible until the 30th. So if we have a discussion on those and you're submitting them, put them in. I will give what credit I can within reason, and then we'll see where we land next week. We officially end, I believe, on the 2nd is the official date that the term ends, and then after the 2nd, it's usually takes me 48 hours to get final grades posted into your OCC accounts. Most students in the 1510 online sections, you should know your final grade probably by Sunday evening, if not Monday afternoon. Okay? I hope everyone is doing well. I'm very happy with the change that a lot of students have made over the last 3 weeks. I appreciate the staying in contact, and I've done everything I can to scramble and try and get everyone caught up who was behind on those, at least in terms of the overviews and feedback and things like that. I have apologize for some of you who were up to date and you still have a couple of files that need to be posted there. As I said, just understand that when it comes to that, I will take that into consideration when grading the final draft on these things. If you didn't have a draft feedback on something, argumentation, you didn't have your draft 2 feedback on there and you're working on final, I'll take that into consideration and I won't reduce points on there. Just understand I'm trying very hard to catch up some about 9 or 10 other students through the online classes who have had some serious situations this term that have required me to kind of bounce back and forth between a bunch of different files and a lot of email contact and other things and Zoom sessions. And I still have, I think, 2 of you that we need to try and meet tonight or tomorrow on a Zoom session for catch-up, okay? Guys, I wish you all well. I look forward to seeing those final things, and then, get those in, and hopefully you'll be getting a good end to your term here.